Welcome to Jazz Time. Jazz Time is an online store that buys, sells, and trades authentic luxury watches. We make these videos so our customers can easily choose the best watch for themselves in the comfort of their own home. If you like this watch, click the link in the description below to buy it at the lowest price anywhere online. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Self-Winding Chronograph. Reference 26240OR.OO.D315CR.02 Rose Gold Chronograph. I'm going to talk to you guys about the bezel, the dial, the case, the bracelet, the movement. I'll try it on, give you my thoughts, as well as a little bit of background of how this watch came to be. So, let's start. This is the Royal Oak line. It's not the 50th exact anniversary, but this model year was produced during the 50th anniversary. The Royal Oak itself was released in 1972. 50 years after would make it 2022, and in 2022, last year, this watch was made, a 50th anniversary version of it. The only difference between the 50th anniversary and this one, which is the 51st year, is that the 50th year had a 50th rotor on the back, where the movement is. This one does not, as it is a 51st year. But again, this specific model came out 50 years ago after its original in 1972. And of course, there have been some things that have been changed to make it updated in the past 50 years. Now, let's first talk about, we'll talk about the dial. So the dial actually, AP decided to do what they call the new blue 50th. It's the color that is the same blue that AP used in 1972. Very cool. What a great way to pay homage to a legendary watch than to use the exact color that they used for the very first Royal Oak. So I think that's pretty cool. Now, the dial has this grand tapisserie dial, and all that means is that it has these little waffles, so it looks like a sort of waffle cutout. It's called the Grand Tapisserie, but now it's smaller. If you look at this tapisserie, it's called Mega Tapisserie, which is much bigger. Makes sense because Royal Oak is a smaller of the two watches. Now, the dial has been reconfigured as well in this chronograph. If you compare it to the older version, in that the subdials you see here at 3, 6, and 9 are all the same size. And that's because the movement has also been changed. When the movement was a different movement, a movement that didn't fit this watch, the subdials were all different sizes. Now that the movement has been updated to fit this watch, now that the movement has been updated to a very excellent movement, an in-house movement actually, it's been made so that all the subdials are the exact same size. Which, in my opinion, and many others as well as AP, makes the watch look much better. It also pushes the date out toward the periphery, towards the very edge, as you can see here. The date wheel was pushed out between the 4 and 5 at the very edge. Before, when the movement was too small, the date wheel was pushed towards the center and made it look, honestly, quite awkward. Okay, the hour markers have actually also been adjusted. Now, they used to be kind of skinny. Now they've flattened them out and made them look a bit wider so it's much more legible. And if I had the other on the same side, you could tell, but if you want to see, you could simply go to jazztime.com and take a look at it there. The older version, the hands were much skinnier and so were the hour markers. The logo also got a bit of an update. Instead of saying A, the logo's underneath the 12 o'clock between the 11 and 2. Underneath the 12 o'clock position, they used to have AP's logo, and they don't say Audemars Piguet in white lettering. It looked good, but not as good as this. This way is much better. They just put the simple words Audemars Piguet, which of course is the name of the brand. They don't put any other logo, and they didn't put it in white, which I also think is much better. This watch is in gold, and so that's how they put the logo, which is arguably the most important part, or distinguishable part on this watch, which is just saying the name, and they put that in gold, rightfully so. And the gold done here in this gold applied logo is done so very carefully and very beautifully. So that is the dial, and I guess I would also say that the Grand Tapisserie dial, it does not go to the very edge of the dial. The hour markers are printed where it's flat. I'm not sure if they did that on the older models too, but I definitely think it looks really good here. So far as the dial goes, I really have to say Audemars has really done a fantastic job. And even if you look at these subdials, It is kind of hard to notice, but they really spent a lot of time making sure that the subdials are not just flat. They could have done it in flat, but if you notice, there's one circle where the hand goes up to, and then on the periphery, that's where the markers are. Let's say, take for example the 3 o'clock. You see how that it's a 12, 3, 6, and 9. That's on one disc. And then they put the hour markers, the markers on the periphery, and they separate it. So it makes the watch look like it has more depth as opposed to just putting it on one flat disc. It gives it texture and depth, and it looks really quite nice. Okay, and let's talk about the case here. Now, the case is a 41mm case. It is made of rose gold, and a few things I want to bring to your attention is that the polish on the case has been changed from the previous version. I believe this polishing on this case is much better than it's ever been. It makes sense because the watch only evolves to become better and better, and one of those evolutions is the polishing on the case or the beveled edges. Now, when I turn it on its side, you see here, okay, let me turn it to its 3 o'clock side where the crown is, and here you can see the beveled edge. The beveled edge is where it's highly polished. You can see where my finger's pointing to, right? Okay, it's all high polished there. That used to be very small, but now they made it bigger, that beveled edge. And it's larger to give the watch a more slim look, as well as allow the play of light between the satin finish and the high polish to play out more. And if you do compare it to the older version, you'll see why it is so much better now. It's much more uniform, it's thicker. Before it used to taper, and now it doesn't. It's one uniform size. It just looks better. Okay, now let me look on the other side, the 9 o'clock side, where you can see how the taper continues. That's a really beautiful way to display the case, is by making the beveled edges much larger. Okay, so that's the case. Oh, I should mention one other thing, that if you notice, the top of the case is all a satin finish. If you look at the top of it, if you look at it straight down, it's all satin finish. And then if you look at the side of the bezel, it's all high polish. And then again, you see the beveled edge, which I just showed you. It's all high polish, so it alternates back and forth. And that is what really allows it to look like it's shining, like it's glittering, or it has this really amazing display of light when you look at it. I don't think I know of any other watch that does this. Maybe the Nautilus, but I don't think they have nearly done it as well as the Audemars. Okay, now let's talk about the pushers. I guess I could say something about those as well, although they haven't changed much since the last generation. You didn't have to unscrew them, you just simply pressed them in, which is a really smart idea. I don't know why, for example, Rolex, you would have to actually unscrew the crown pushers before you can push it in. I don't think that's the best design, although I guess it makes it safer in water. But in the AP, this and the previous version, you could simply press it like a start and stop button and it would go. You don't have to unscrew it. Whereas the older versions, 2 generations or so back, you would have to actually unscrew it, which was kind of a headache, and those pushers would actually break if you didn't screw them back in and you accidentally hit it. Okay, so that is the dial, bezel, and case. Let's go ahead and talk about the movement. This movement here is a brand new movement, and you might wonder what's the big deal about having a new movement? Well, it's like having a new engine. The movement is a caliber 4401. It has 40 jewels, 381 parts, and a diameter of 32 millimeters. Now, to just give some reference on that, the diameter of 32 millimeters in a 41 millimeter watch is, in my opinion, the perfect size. You do not want to have the movement too big. I've seen IWCs that have movements that just completely fill the back. It looks like it's too big. Or you don't want them to be too small. Patek, for example, I think makes their movements a little too small for their watch. In the AP case, the movement was designed to perfectly fit this case. In fact, it was using their code 1159, which was also 41 millimeters, and it was specifically designed for that watch. So fitting a 41mm code 1159 and fitting this one, it just made sense. They're both 41mm, they both do the same function, which is chronograph and date and time. So it makes sense that they would all have the same movement, and it's a very beautiful, beautiful movement. I think this movement, if you compare this movement to, for example, the Vacheron of the overseas, it really blows away the Vacheron. And even if you compare it to Paddock Nautilus 5980, which is a chronograph version, I think this one still looks better. The Paddock movement has been around, and they haven't revamped it for more than, I want to say 15 years. So it's the same movement that they've been making for 15 years, and it doesn't really look great. I think this one looks much, much better than that, than the Paddock, the Nautilus, the Chronograph, or even the Vacheron Overseas Chronograph. So I think Audemars really has the best movement in its class, which is a top class, actually. So in my opinion, it's pretty much the best one. Okay, that's the movement. And as I said before, the movement being out the larger movements, remember I told you at the very beginning, the dial is kind of revamped and the sub-dials are evenly sized. And the date wheel is out toward the periphery, and the reason it's out toward the periphery is because the movement is updated. The movement is the larger 32mm in diameter, which I believe the old diameter was something small, like 28mm. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but 4mm on 32mm is a 10% difference. So basically, it has moved the date wheel out further. Okay, that is the movement. It does have a longer power reserve. I should mention the power reserve is 70 hours. To give some reference on that, most watches in this class have power reserves of 48 hours, including Paddock. Now, why is that relevant? Well, the amount of power reserve is kind of like how far the car can drive, or miles per gallon in the car. A watch that has a high power reserve means it's very efficient. It's built well. So it can run a very long time on one charge. So it also beats everybody else in that. Vacheron, well, I would say everyone else. Let's just compare the big three. Vacheron, Paddock, Audemars. Both Paddock and Vacheron have much, much lower power reserves, which makes sense because AP has redeveloped this movement. So they're the first to change the movement, and so they really beat the other brands when it comes to movements. Now, you might want to talk about brand or image or whatever, but fine, I don't want to speak to those things, but I can tell you from a purely mechanical standpoint, AP has beaten both of them in terms of movement, and probably a lot of other things too. So that's the reason why AP watches are trading for such a high premium. So if you want to buy this watch, click on the link in the description below to buy it at jazztime.com at the lowest price anywhere online. Now let's move on to the final part, which is the bracelet, or the strap, I should say. The strap is using this blue leather, and that makes sense because the watch itself is blue, so they've used a blue leather crocodile strap, and what I could say about this, what is so different? Well, of course, the strap is beautiful. Okay, that goes without saying, but what I should bring your attention to is the buckle. Now, Audemars also did a great job revamping the buckle. The buckle before, I would have to say, it really sucked. It sucked because the folding AP clasp could ride up and down using one wrist, as opposed to laying flat in the center of the wrists, and it was kind of flimsy. It was just not very good. It was not built well. And I think, obviously, AP realized that and it wasn't built well, and they built another one, which makes sense now because this one, as you can see, it looks like a butterfly development, where you can open it and both sides pop open. Now, what this does, as opposed to the older version, just one generation before, it allows that buckle to sit in the middle of your wrist where it's supposed to sit. Now, AP did a great job of making this buckle the way it should be. They should have made it like this from day one. Why they didn't do that, I have no idea, but it looks really good now. And not only did it look good, it feels good. The older version of the AP folding clasp, no good. This one, good. Now, APB and AP has even done an amazing job polishing on this buckle. Now, Look at the buckle. Even notice the center of it is brushed and the sides again are a high polish. That's just attention to detail that nobody else does, that AP does, and it really looks fantastic. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and try this watch on my wrist and give you my final thoughts. Though I kinda did give my thoughts to you throughout. Anyways, I am 200 pounds, 6 feet tall, and this watch is 41 millimeters. It looks fantastic on my wrist. My thoughts are, it's a bigger watch for those people that are bigger. I would say for a 7-inch wrist or larger. I have a 7-inch wrist. If you're anything smaller, I would suggest you get a 38 millimeter watch just because that watch would be too big for you. But let's just say for a blanket reference, a 7-inch wrist is ideal for this watch. And of course, it looks fantastic. What do I think about it? Well, compared to the competitors, Patek and Vacheron, Patek, the 5980, that would probably be the best comparison, as well as the Vacheron overseas, and in many regards, I think AP really beats them both out. Both of those other brands, Patek and Vacheron, have not had a revamp in around 10 years. For the Patek, they haven't had a revamp for over 15 years, and the Vacheron hasn't had a revamp for about 7. So AP is just killing it in this department. They've made their watch more ergonomic, the dial much nicer, the movement much nicer, and it looks fabulous. I would probably have to say if I were to choose between those three, I would choose the AP just because of all of those reasons. So if you like this watch, click on the link in the description below, go to jazztime.com, and buy this watch at the lowest price anywhere online.
If you want to find out more about the watch you just saw in the video, you can just click below on Show More to see the full description. Then you can check the link next to model as seen in video, click on it, and you will get to the proper page where you can see all the details. If you're watching on a mobile phone, you have to click on the arrow down on the right hand side below the video to see the full description. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you would like to share this video with your friends, you can use the share button below and share it on any platform you like. If you have questions, constructive feedback, want to tell us about some mistakes or misspeaks, just write a comment below. If you want to see more videos like this, you should subscribe to our channel and visit our channel page where you can find all the videos. And if you're interested in a specific watch brand, you can check out our playlists. If you want to check the price for a watch or want to buy one, remember at jazztime.com you always get a steep discount, so you should check the prices with us. If you want to know the price for a specific watch, just go to Google, type in JazzTime, plus the brand, model, and the details you're interested in, and Google will find the right page for you. Thank you for watching.